Hey guys, it's Friday again, and we have been working on some handstand push-ups or push-up negatives, tempo work, some strengthening, as well as some lunging work. So it's going to be every 2.5 minutes for 20 minutes. You're going to do 5 strict handstand push-up negatives, immediately followed by 10 back rack lunges. So this is the 3rd week that we're doing this. So if you've been coming in, you should have a good idea about where you're at, trying to build, get a little stronger for handstand push-ups, challenging yourself with the position that you're using. I'm going to talk a little bit about the way this works. So for each, you got 5 reps. Each rep, the goal is to take 5 seconds to go down. You pause for 3 seconds, and then try to explode back to the top, where you pause for a second and repeat, okay? So if you're doing this against the wall, a real handstand push-up against the wall, you can kick back to the top. If you can't kick back to the top, you can just come to the ground and kick back up if you need. The same concepts I'm going to cover. I'm going to go over a scaled version pike push-up on the box here. All the same aspects here apply no matter what variation you're doing. So the first one is controlling the entire way down. So what we want to see is 5 seconds. So I'm starting at the top here. Okay, keep my elbows tucked in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, back to the top. Pause for a second. Okay, what I want to avoid, what I see all the time, particularly with handstand push-ups against the wall, is that people control, and they get about 1 inch off the floor, and then they relax. Okay? So really try to control right up until your head is resting. Don't miss that last inch. When people are doing strict handstand push-ups, in real, like not the negative, they're just doing strict, that inch off the floor is the part that people really struggle with, okay? So a great variation for this is actually to add a deficit, to put your hands up on something that's even higher than the floor and control yourself into a greater range of motion. If you challenge yourself with that and could really, again, control all the way to the bottom, you're gonna get way stronger when you get into actual just hand, head, strict handstand push-up work. Okay, so that's a couple ways that you can think about what to focus on when you're doing this. The hand position as well, head position, we talk about this all the time. I like to use some specific target for my head, particularly when I'm doing like a pike version, because it's easy to visualize that tripod position. A common mistake is that people put their hands and head in a line. So at the bottom, okay, we don't want to see this, where the head and hands are in a line, the elbows flare out. We want to be here, okay? Elbows tucked in. The top of my head is touching. I'm not on my forehead, okay? So this is that position that we want to be, no matter what variation that you're doing. I can do the same thing in a pike position here, okay? At the bottom, still same position, elbows in, okay? If handstand push-ups are hard for you, feel free to do negatives in a regular push-up as well. Instead of your head, is your chest touching the floor, okay? So that's part 1. And we got the back rack lunge. So again, if you've been doing this for the last few weeks, the goal is to build up on these. We have 10 lunges, that's 5 each leg. Stand up tall, brace your midline, take a step back, tap the knee, drive back to the top. Okay? So the goal here is to maintain that upright torso, try not to lean forward as you stand up, okay? Always make sure that your feet are about shoulder width apart when you step back. A common error is that people will step back straight, and then they're not gonna feel very balanced here, okay? So you wanna have a little bit of width. At the bottom, your knee should kiss the ground, controlled, okay? Front shin is vertical, back knee is right under the hip, and you drive straight up, mostly through that front leg, back to where you started. Okay, so again, challenge yourself there. I always tell people you shouldn't need an extra pad for your knee. You should control your descent so your knee is not smashing into the floor, okay? But just be careful there if you need just something to think about. Okay, so you're gonna do that back and forth every 2.5 minutes for 20 minutes. And then we have a fun little chipper for you, all right? It's gonna be 30 thrusters. This is for time, one time through. 30 thrusters, then 40 toes to bar, and then 50 calories on the rower, all right? So a bunch of things to think about here. The thrusters. The design here is it should be slightly heavier than you do normally. Okay, this should challenge you. The prescribed weight is 135 for guys, 95 for the ladies. All right, so not necessarily unbroken except for the fittest athletes, but thrusters, when you add weight, you have to really focus on using your legs to finish the movement. So a lot of people, when they're doing a thruster and it's kind of light, they'll start pressing early, right? So they'll look like this, okay? When the weight gets heavy, you really have to focus on finishing the extension of the legs before the arms start pressing. If you notice what I did there, I'm really heaving the weight off my shoulders. It's almost like I'm jumping at the top of the squat to get as much energy into that barbell as I can. Okay, so again, the heavier the weight gets, the more important that position becomes, okay? Keeping a vertical torso, good rack. If you don't have a good rack position, this can be really challenging. Feel free to sub dumbbells if you have any wrist issues. But again, this is where position will really matter as these thrusters get heavier. All right? From there we got the 40 toes to bar. So again, toes to bar, hanging. Use a kick, touch your toes. Okay? If that's hard for you, one of the things I always tell people is feel free with stuff like this to mix and match. So maybe you can do some toes to bar, but not 40. But that doesn't mean you can't do any reps. Feel free to do 10, 20 reps here and then scale down to something easier, okay? So most commonly people scale to a hanging knee raise, okay? That's the easiest one, but I remind people there is there's a difference in between the two. So if you always do knee raises, but it's hard for you to touch your toes to the bar, just do toes to eye level or something like that, okay? A little trick I like to give people, if your hands or shoulders hurt, is to find a bar that you can reach. It's a little bit high for me. Come over here. So a good little, again, in between, just to save your hands, we never want to tear our hands, or save your shoulders, is to keep your feet on the ground for every single rep. So I can still get a good stimulus, but every single rep I get to take some pressure off the hands and shoulders, okay? So that's a cool way you can scale. Obviously, the thing we talk about most commonly is the V-up or tuck-up. This is nice for social distancing. You can stay in your box, but the main thing here, when you initiate the movement, you should be in hollow, okay? You don't want to start like this. So keeping tension through the midline, okay? If you're doing the V-up, keep the legs straight, okay? Really challenge yourself. The tuck-up, a little bit easier, okay? But again, feel free to mix and match any of those. That's 40 reps, and then you are finishing calories on the rower. We talked about this earlier this week. For rowing for calories, really focus on finishing the pull on the backside. Don't rush when you finish your pull. Drive with the legs finished here. Don't rush into the next rep too quickly, okay? You'll notice that if you have time to play around with that, see if you can get, again, ideally 1 calorie per pull or 2, but really focusing on where your power output comes and playing around with the finish and the pacing of your row, okay? Feel free to substitute this if you want. We're doing a lot of running in yesterday's workout, but feel free to sub a run if you want, skier, bike, any of those stuff is all good. So have fun, and we'll see you tomorrow.